It is Super Tuesday, and there are about, all of these states that are voting. And all of a sudden, there's all this uncertainty and all of this, quote, momentum that's going with Joe Biden. Is it momentum, though? Is it real? Let's go to this poll from none other than 538 and Nate Silver, which, by the way, quick refresher, Nate Silver, 538, they were totally in the tank for Clinton, said there was no way she could lose. The fact that they didn't have to resign from their organization and just dismantle their organization in shame after 2016 is mind-boggling, but they didn't have to because they serve the establishment. The establishment is who they serve. So check this out. This is the final forecast from 538. Our final forecast for Super Tuesday shows Biden's surge and lots of uncertainty. So what is this surge that they're referring to? Are a bunch of people excited about Joe Biden all of a sudden? Did that change? Well, let's read on. Former Vice President Joe Biden has gotten a lot of good news over the past few days. A huge, almost 30-point win in South Carolina, a series of impressive endorsements. Other candidates in the modern lane, Buttigieg, Klobuchar dropped out. But one thing we haven't seen a lot since South Carolina was hard data. That changed late last night with a flurry of new polls. Now we have at least 2 polls conducted since South Carolina in every single Super Tuesday state. Things look good for Biden, this is according to the article. Biden is now about twice as likely as Sanders to win a plurality of pledged delegates, according to our primary model, which gives him a 65% chance compared with 34% for Sanders. It started to shift toward Biden once polls showed the potential for him to win big in South Carolina, and it anticipated a bounce in polling in Super Tuesday states if he did win big there. Now, here's an interesting part. Still, even after South Carolina, Biden's plurality chances had risen only to 32% compared with 64% with Sanders. That means the polling bounce from the events of the past few days has been bigger than the quote model anticipated. But to be clear, however, there's still a lot of uncertainty. We've been talking a lot about delegate pluralities, which obscures the fact that most likely outcome in the mile is still that no one's blah, 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 blah. So what does this really mean? Especially this highlighted part that I have here. Still, even after South Carolina, Biden's plurality chances had risen only to 32% compared with 64% for Sanders. That means the polling bounce from the events of the past few days has been bigger than the model anticipated. What does that really code for? What that really means is that the people have not changed. What has changed? The amount of the establishment that's in the tank for Joe Biden. Pete Buttigieg got behind him. Beto O'Rourke got behind him. Amy Klobuchar got behind him. These are 3 candidates who had no momentum whatsoever. These are candidates who got booed off stage, who got chased out of a union event, who had to have an event in her home state canceled because of protesters, because they took over and hijacked the event in her home state. These are candidates who couldn't beat Ted Cruz, who couldn't get at 1%, but regardless of the fact that he had the biggest media push out of any candidate. Keep in mind, Beto O'Rourke was the first establishment bestowed darling. He had that huge media push. He had that Bruce Springsteen-esque cover on the cover of Time magazine. It did nothing for him because no one was inspired by his 8th grade Spanish and his shitty skateboard skills and his no ideas. And this cavalcade of losers got behind Joe Biden, along with a mass media surge via CNN and MSNBC. And what people like Nate Silver do is they take these pieces of information and they do this mathematical equation saying, well, this support's going to go here, that support's going to go there. And then they cherry pick a couple polls, and then they decide this is how likely Biden is to win. And they want to scare you. When do they want to scare you? On Super Tuesday. All of this analysis, all of these pieces of data have nothing to do with we the people. It has everything to do with we the establishment. And then they arrange the numbers in a certain way to make it look like, well, Biden's got to be the guy. So what they want to do is they want to scare you into either staying home or to pulling the lever for Biden because you think that's the only chance. That's what they want. And the opposite is true. If Biden is the nominee, he will lose badly to Donald Trump. He will lose worse than Hillary did. And by the way, here's a poll. Here's a poll that I bet they didn't bring about into their analysis over at 538, which, by the way, again, they got everything wrong in 2016 royally. They got nothing right. If they weren't so in the tank for the establishment, they wouldn't even exist anymore. The only reason they still exist, the only reason Nate Silver is able to still do what he does is because he's a stenographer for the establishment. He's a propagandist. Just in their own article, if you just look at how we just read that article, and if you read between the lines, what it is code for is, by the way, this has nothing to do with the momentum of the people. All of these shifts have everything to do with what establishment lackeys have done. And we ran our analytical formula that we don't know exactly how that works, but we ran our formula, and now we're saying Biden's ahead because of these cherry-picked polls and all these establishment lackeys that got behind Biden. I bet this poll wasn't taken. Look at this. Who's the best candidate on healthcare? Sanders by a landslide. Environment, Sanders by a landslide. Immigration, Sanders by a lot. I don't know how Biden's in second, by the way. The participants in this poll must not have heard Biden talking about how he wants to build a wall or a fence, actually, to be real specific. But even Donald Trump acknowledged at times a fence is okay. You can find that footage from Biden in 2006 talking about how he wants a border fence. But anyway, and on the economy and jobs, once again, Sanders. And in this poll, Bloomberg, people are saying Bloomberg's going to be fine there. But nonetheless, Sanders ahead in pretty much everything. Pretty much everything, Sanders is in the lead. He's tied for first in one, a domineering first in the rest of them. I bet they didn't take that poll into account. Oh, and by the way, if Biden's your guy, here's more of the manufactured consent for Biden. Here's another Biden endorsement, by the way. Here's another Biden endorsement. James Comey. James Comey, a right-winger from the deep state. James Comey, who has since become a hero of the fake resistance because of all the Trump-Russia nonsense, where, by the way, you don't have to pick a good guy, America. The world is not a comic book. Trump is corrupt to high heaven. He's not a good guy. He's a terrible president. He's an oligarch. But the deep state is just out there for their own agenda too. And they want to scare you about Russia because it's easy to distract you from a domestic boogeyman if you keep people scared of a foreign one. So it's possible that there's no good guys, America. That's the world we live in. But here's James Comey, hero of the faux resistance, voted in the first Democratic primary to support the party dedicated to restoring values in the White House. I agree with Amy Klobuchar. We need a candidate who cares about all Americans and will restore decency, dignity to the office. There is a reason Trump fears Joe Biden and roots for Bernie. First of all, Trump doesn't do that. Trump doesn't do that. Trump fears Bernie. I mean that's out there. Trump does not want to run against Bernie. He calls out what the establishment's doing to Bernie because he's hoping it has reverse psychology and people will go for a different candidate. Trump fears Bernie. Trump does not fear Joe Biden. I mean, this is just war is peace, up is down. And James Comey, a deep state like this is what the Biden campaign is. This is Hillary 2.0. This is the Mick resistance 2.0. And even if you think that this is the best direction for the country, that incrementalism, when we're facing climate catastrophe, Joe Biden's incremental ideas that were cutting edge in 1986, even if you think that is the best way forward, which, need I remind you, there is nothing pragmatic about an incremental solution to a catastrophic problem. But even if you think that's the way forward, you realize he'll get crushed. Look at what Hillary did against Trump. Biden will lose by even worse. Biden has even more baggage than Hillary did. And yet the establishment's trying to scare you into voting for Joe Biden. They're trying to make it out like that's where the momentum is. And Liz Warren is still in it for one reason and one reason only, to take votes from Bernie. That's why Liz Warren is still there. So that's what we're up against this Super Tuesday. And we got to be so loud, so loud, so loud that we can't be stopped, because the establishment, they're getting loud now. They're getting loud because they're scared. And they're trying to make it seem like there's all this momentum behind Biden. But what is the momentum really? It's a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of propaganda from the corporate media, from CNN and MSNBC, which, by the way, we're going to get to Chris Matthews later. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's a cavalcade of losers who are getting behind Joe Biden. They're not going to bring any momentum. They're just going to have propagandists like Nate Silver fudge the numbers around to make it seem like Biden has all this momentum now. In reality, they bring inspiration of absolutely nobody. Beto O'Rourke couldn't get past 1%, couldn't beat Ted Cruz. Amy Klobuchar wasn't going to win her home state, so she knew she had to leave. Pete Buttigieg got booed off stage, got chased out of a union event, had to cancel events in Florida because no one cared he was coming. Do not be discouraged. And I know a lot of people already, I've seen it on Twitter. A lot of people are already discouraged. They're like, look, we knew they were going to put their thumb on the scale big time. We knew that. We saw that coming. Now it's happening. So the best thing we can do is point it out for the high sugar fluff that it is. It's like the establishment has Godzilla, and Godzilla is running amok, but it's up to us to point out, be like, wait a second, it's freaking cardboard. It's fake. That isn't real. We can push it over. It's just heavy cardboard. Come on, let's go. Let's go. We can push this thing over. Because it's not real. The momentum for Joe Biden is not real. It's fake. It's manufactured. It's manufactured by the military-industrial complex and big media and paid propagandists. It's fake. It isn't real. Bernie filling up stadiums, that's real. That's real. All the footage you see from Bernie rallies, that's real. All the people knocking on doors, that's real. All of the independent individuals who are giving their hard-earned money that most Americans don't have a lot of to spare to Bernie Sanders, so he is outraising people who are in the pockets of billionaires because there's more of us than there are of them. That's real. This manufactured consent is not real. So don't be discouraged, and get out there this Super Tuesday.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your